If you had a glass of water, and there was in front of you a Muslim man, and you have another person, who has a child with him, and this person is an atheist, who would you give it to? The Imam, he said that you give it to the child, you give it to the child, you give it to the child. He reiterated that, and then he said his words, humanity first. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الأئمة والمهديين وسلم تسليما. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brother Sermad.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Father, for you speak.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's a big honor.
So today we want to talk about a really important topic, and that is the da'wah, the message of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. So we're obviously proclaiming to the world that the 12th Imam, Imam al-Mahdi, the Imam of the time, the one whom in this day and age Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had meant when he said, whoever dies and doesn't know the Imam of their time has died the death of ignorance. The Imam of the time, Imam al-Mahdi, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, the 12th successor to the Prophet Muhammad. We proclaim that he is here, and we're giving glad tidings and have been for many years, and that he has a message, and people ask about that message. And I think that, you coming from a background where your parents are Iraqi, and you have interestingly enough, a parent that comes from a Sunni background,
yes,
and one that comes also from a Shia background. Yes. So you're really familiar with this idea of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam in both Sunni traditions and Shia traditions, right? Yes. And I think that the first thing that pops up in the minds of people when they're talking about Imam al-Mahdi is this man that's going to appear on a horse, and he has a sword, and he's killing people, bidabbah fi nas, and all of this, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. He's apparently to come at a time when the world is in total turmoil and chaos, and he just cleans it through, obviously, via the sword. So the world comes out cleansed, and there's no real understanding of how that happens other than, like you said, this idea or image of him on a horse with a sword and so on. Yeah, it's a bit over-dramatized, I guess.
Yeah, it is over-dramatized, and it is, I think, to a very big degree, incorrect. Yeah. When you actually look at the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, you'll find that some narrations state that the matter, the state is pushed towards the 12th Imam, like a bride is pushed towards her groom, and that he rises to the seat of power, or the throne of the state, without shedding a single drop of blood. Yeah. Okay? You do have also narrations that speak about nations that make revolutions in order to join the state of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. You also have narrations where entire nations or state, they fall to the army of the Imam, and they pledge allegiance to him, join into his state. His state expands. These neighboring countries will become a part of that, but due to miraculous reasons, right? Not due to the fact that he is spreading the religion in an ISIS-styled way, or by force, much like the Muslim religion began to spread during the time of Abu Bakr, and especially Umar ibn Khattab. You have narrations that mention that there'll be other countries that will see the companions, an army, a battalion of the Imam, all of them are actually walking on water. And then they say to themselves, well, if this is how his companions are, then what is he like? And then the city opens up and falls to the hands of the army of the Imam, much like the city of Jericho fell, at the blowing of the horns by the Israelites, in the time of Joshua son of Nun. Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, there are narrations that state that there are physical struggles, that there are battles that take place. But when you really hone in on these narrations, you'll always find that it is, for example, narrations that are stating that between the Imam and between the Romans, for example, there's a peace treaty, but then the Romans, they break that peace treaty, and they're the ones that are aggressing. You also find in the narrations that Imam al-Mahdi and his companions, they never have any sort of violent tendencies, or military type operations or actions they're really focused just on da'wah work, calling the people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, until there's a character called an-nafs az-zakiyya, and this nafs az-zakiyya, this pure soul who's innocent, he is slaughtered. And the assumption also is that this slaughtering of the pure soul happens after many of the Ansar had already been imprisoned or killed or oppressed over the course of a long time period. And so then the Ansar act in self-defense, and that's where you get some of these narrations that mention that there are battles that are taking place. There's also enemies that in the narrations that are mentioned, like, for example, the army that gets swallowed by the earth. This army, the Ansar of the Imam, they're not doing anything. They're just preaching, and then this whole entire army goes forward to kind of oppress them or go out against them. Because they have doubts that they're trying to, stir up, or their message, they don't like the message of the Imam. And so God causes the earth to swallow them. And so these types of miraculous things causes people to enter into the da'wah without there being any sort of bloodshed. And I think that this is important for the people to take note of. There's also narrations of large numbers of Jews and people of other religions that end up falling into the da'wah, pledging allegiance to the Imam, becoming a part of his state, after he pulls forward certain relics and treasures that they recognize as being theirs. For example, like the Ark of the Covenant, or certain old manuscripts, or relics that belong to the prophets and the messengers, like the staff of Moses, the rod of Aaron, or the ring of Solomon, or other relics of this sort. And so the Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, his message that we are proclaiming in this time is one of peace. It's a reminder to humanity. One of the interesting things that people should take note of is that when Ahmed al-Hasan alayhi salam was describing this call, the call of the Imam al-Mahdi, he used two words, and those two words to describe the call was humanity first. It is a message of peace. Imam al-Mahdi is not even coming in this day and age in order that he spreads the religion of Islam. This is not his mission, by the way. He is a successor of the Prophet Muhammad. Of course, he has a firm knowing, belief, yaqeen, certitude, in the fact that the Prophet Muhammad was a true prophet, and that the religion of Islam in its true original form is the religion of God and the religion of all of the prophets and messengers. But in the narrations, and according to his own statements today, in this day and age, Imam al-Mahdi does not prohibit other people from practicing their own religions. He believes in absolute religious freedom. And this is something which is also made very clear in the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, because they state that the Qa'im or Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, it's whether it's Imam al-Mahdi, whether it's the Qa'im, whether it's the Yamani, or whether it's any of the other Mahdis, they are all together, and they're all they all go under the umbrella of this divine just state, and they are all working by the command of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. And so it doesn't really matter who the character is that's mentioned in the narrations, but because at the end of the day, it goes back to the thought and the message of the 12th Imam, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, and his command. And the 12th Imam, who is actually the Prophet Muhammad in his reincarnation or in his return, he rules the people in the divine just state by their own books. So his message is the message of the supremacy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right? And we're going to get into that because that's really important, Sermad.
Yes, of course.
But the method by which he rules and implements the rulership of God and the supremacy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the supremacy of God, is not by the Islamic Sharia, but rather by ruling over each people according to their own beliefs or according to their own books. And that's why you have the narrations mentioning that the Qa'im rules over and judges the Jews by what they have, which is the Torah, and he rules the Christians by the Bible or the Gospels, and he rules the Muslims by the Quran, and he rules every group of people according to their own book and that which they profess in and that which they confess. So Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, he doesn't need to spread the religion or the truth by the sword, because the truth should shine bright enough and have enough evidence, to stand on its own feet.
Yes.
So any message that has to be propagated by the sword, or by violent means, or oppressive means, is definitely not the truth. Okay. That's one of the reasons that also in the jurisprudence, and in the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, one of the things that the Mahdi does, or the Qa'im does, is abolish the jizya. The jizya was this tax that was imposed on non-Muslims during the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and in the time period after that. So basically, it was like the Muslims, they established a state, and in order to protect the non-Muslims that are living under them, they had to pay extra taxes. So the Christians and the Jews in that time, the Mandaeans, the followers of the Abrahamic tradition, they had one of two choices: either convert to Islam and then they didn't have to pay these high taxes, or they practice their own faith, remain Jewish, remain Christian, remain Mandaean, but then they're going to have to pay this enormous amount of taxes. And so the Mahdi abolishes that. That's no longer in existence. All people, contribute in the same way to the divine just state, no matter what it is that your religion is. And you can live with other members of your faith. And if you break a law, then you are only judged by the penalties that are mentioned in your book, that you profess, that you proclaim.
Yeah.
So if you're a Jew and you break the law, it doesn't make sense in the divine just state. It doesn't make sense to Imam al-Mahdi that he would basically impose the Muhammadan penalty upon him. Or if you're a Christian, you wouldn't impose the Jewish penalty on that Christian. No, you would go back to the words of Christ and you would judge the Christian by his own book, and you would judge the Jew by his own book and what it is that he believes in, and every person like that. And as such, such the Buddhist, as such the Hindu, all traditions, all people will have the ability to practice and believe in whatever it is that they want to believe in, because there is no forcing when it comes to religion.
Definitely. Yeah.
So we talked about the implementation of the jurisprudence and how every people will be judged by their own book. Mm-hmm. This is, in effect, the rule of the supremacy of God. Mm-hmm. Why? Because we believe, and Imam Mahdi alayhi salam proclaims, that the laws that were given to Moses and the book, the Torah, the Hebrew Bible, the laws that were given to Jesus, the Gospels, the laws that were given to Muhammad, the jurisprudence that was given to Muhammad, the Quran, that all of them are legitimate religions, books, and messages, jurisprudence, laws that came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It wasn't invented by man. Yeah. And for that reason, upholding these laws would be the upholding of the supremacy of God, of the rule of God in the land. And we believe also that most of the religious community, whether they're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, all of these people are good people that they have one desire. That the members of these religions, they have one desire really, and that is at the end of the day to live a good life in the way that God wants them to live, right?
Generally, yeah.
And we believe that God, had a message that you can see in all of their books and on the tongues of all of their prophets and messengers. Sure. And that message was humanity first, That's the reason why God establishes communication with these prophets and with these people. If you go to the Jewish people, if you go to a synagogue, if you talk to rabbis, and you can even see it in their speeches, what do they say? They say that they believe that they are God's chosen people. But what is the purpose of them being God's chosen people? To be a beacon of light for the rest of the world, right? Yeah. To establish this kind of justice on the earth and to shine for humanity and to guide humanity and to help humanity. And so the whole purpose of the Israelites, the whole purpose of the Jewish people being God's chosen people is that they were chosen in order to, according to their beliefs, in order that they help the rest of the world, right?
Yeah,
bring God's message to them and bring these people to God. You look into the Gospels, what do you find? You find that Jesus Christ is always putting other people first. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's kind of like the culmination of the message of Jesus, is it not?
For sure, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Jesus, says that in one part of the Gospels that the greatest thing that a man can do is to give up his own life, for those whom he loves, right? Yeah. Jesus, in other parts of the Gospel, he basically makes statements that mean that if somebody asks you, for the jacket on your back, that you give them your shirt too, right? Or if somebody slaps you on one cheek, that you give them the other cheek, right? So even if it causes harm to your own self, that a person is supposed to put that other person, ahead of them. He says even that there's no reward in just loving those people that love you, but rather he commands us to love even our own enemies. Yeah. Okay. So what does that mean? That means he's not saying my followers first. He's not saying the Israelites first. He's not saying the people of my town first. He's not saying America first. What is he saying? He's saying humanity first.
100%.
Yeah? And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you look in his message. What was his message all about? It was about saying that the black man is the same as the white man, and the Chinese man is the same as the Arab man, that there's no difference between God's children. Except in God consciousness, except in taqwa or being God fearing, being God conscious.
And wanting for your brother what you want for yourself.
Exactly. Wanting for your brother what you want for yourself. And Ahmed Hassan, one day he posed this question to his followers. He said, if you were standing and you had a glass of water, and you had only one glass of water, okay, and there was in front of you a Muslim man, okay, who wears the galabiyah, he uses the miswak, he follows all of the sunnah, he's a reciter and memorizer of the Quran, he's a brother in faith. And you have another person, who has a child with him, and this person is an atheist, right? And he's asking for a glass of water. Who would you give it to? Some people of the Ansar, they said we'd give it to the Muslim. And others, they said we would give it to the child because he's a child, and the child is, he's still not an adult. He hasn't disbelieved in God. And they started giving these responses that kind of indicated that the correct answer would be to prefer the person who believes in God over the person who disbelieves in God. And the Imam, he said that, you give it to the child, you give it to the child, you give it to the child. He reiterated that. And then he said his words, which is humanity first. You be a human being. You were a human being before you became a member of a particular faith. That's what you must be anyway in order to be qualified to be a member of any faith. And any faith, any message that came down to humanity, its purpose was to make people into true human beings and to give them those directions, that guidance, which causes a person to be, to hold himself to a much higher moral standard that only human beings would hold themselves to, and that's what distinguishes, us from the rest of the creatures, the animals that are on the planet.
It's totally rational and lacking in the world today, really. So it makes total sense. People have this attitude of taking no matter what, and not giving, and it's barbaric, really.
It is barbaric. And if you reflect on the state of the world today, that's why Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam has come, because the world has reached such a degree, of tyranny and oppression that it's unbearable. You have a small percentage, of individuals that, own 90%. You have 10% of the world's population owning 90% of its resources. You have 90% of the world's population scrambling and running in a loop, like a guinea pig runs in its wheel, in order that they compete with one another to, over that remaining 10%. You have food that is being wasted. We're talking about tons and tons, and hundreds of thousands of tons of good food that, instead of being donated to the poor on a daily, a monthly basis, ends up going to waste because they want to write it off, and not get taxed for it. And if you give it to the poor people, the government considers that this was something which is taxable instead of something which is tax deductible. And so the businesses, in order that they make more profit and they don't have to pay more money, they end up, and not just the restaurants, but also the supermarkets. If you walk into any of these supermarkets, whether it's Meijer, Kroger, Asda, Lidl, any of these big chains, these supermarkets, what takes place behind the scenes? They have, in the back area of their supermarket, they have this waste place. And the waste place is where they place not only all the products that are expired, but they also place in there all the products that are not expired, but just is not selling. And it literally gets hauled off to the trash, and they write it off as a loss, so that they are not held liable. And all the meanwhile, you have every single day 25,000 people that are dying of starvation. And do you understand? That's 25,000 human beings that just need $1 each
to survive. Not die.
To be filled for that day. $25,000. And we have hundreds of millions of dollars. We have billions of dollars worth of food that is going to waste. For this is the opposite of the teachings of the prophets and the messengers. This is the opposite of humanity first. This is the epitome of me first, my country first, me as an individual first. And Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, his message proclaims the opposite. His message is that all the prophets and the messengers that came to tell us that what we should be doing, instead of trading with one another, instead of seeking to gather gold and silver, is to our currency, which we should be actively pursuing, is to ensure that our brothers and our sisters in humanity have what it is that they need. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam says that a person, if he's not your brother in faith, then he is still at least your brother in humanity.
100%.
Okay? And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that whenever you see a poor person, a person without, then know that somebody has taken more than his share. And so what is the Prophet trying to say there? The Prophet is trying to say that every single person that is born on this planet automatically has a right to receive from the planet everything that he needs to live a decent, fulfilled life.
100%.
All of the resources around the planet belong to all the inhabitants of the planet. Just like God provides. If you look into the Torah, you'll find, and in the Gospels, you'll find that Jesus and the rest of the prophets, they take note of this fact. And they tell their followers, do not worry why worry about tomorrow's sustenance? Do you not see that God does not even forget the ants, and he doesn't even forget the foxes, and he doesn't even forget the birds that are flying in the sky? Each and every one of them, God created them, and he took upon himself the responsibility to ensure that their sustenance is available on the planet. So the same thing for sure goes for human beings, whom are a greater creation than anything else that's creeping or crawling on the face of the planet. And yet you have 25,000 people that are dying. And the Prophet said that the reason why they're dying is because there's other people that stole the resources, and they're dying every single day. Because of thieves that are existing on the planet. So anybody who has more than their share, more than what they need to survive, these CEOs that have salaries worth 250 million a year, bonuses of 1 billion a year, salaries of I don't know what, trillion and zillions and all these crazy numbers, while there's people that are dying, that this is a crime, that these people are thieves, these people are, should be held accountable for that, and that the system and the law legislation that allows for companies and individuals to operate at such a degree that itself is something wrong with humanity, and that's a great crime.
Like I remember while I was growing up, my father used to tell me, if you don't get your degree, if you don't qualify in something, then how will you feed yourself? How will you sustain yourself? And this is a man who grew up, obviously, under Shia Islam. And my answer was always, look, God provides, and I don't need to worry about that. I just need to worry about what I'm doing right now. This always was something in my mind that, I wondered where this came from, but now I understand it's a part of the secular ideology, isn't it? Like where we obsess over how we're going to survive, how we're going to gather wealth, how we're going to provide for ourselves, when in reality, as you said, it's already been planned for us. It's already been provided for us the moment we were born. And it's tragic because it's that ideology which drives people to become those CEOs, those sort of wealth gatherers that literally live for one thing, and that is to hoard. And that's what they're doing. They're taking from the people, like you said, who need it.
Now, when we look into religion, Sermad, and we look at the origin of these systems that are existing today, we'll find that the Jewish narrations and the Muslim narrations and the Christian narrations are extremely clear on how it is that it all started. And they're clear also on the fact that this is not how God intended it to be. The narrations mention that there was a time before man's fall that weapons did not exist. And they're very clear on the fact that there are the children of Adam, the children of Seth, that are human beings, and then you have these other children of the devil, these children of Cain, that are seeking to oppress the children of Seth. And that they're more focused on building these grand cities, and they are the ones whom are responsible for inventing things like scales and currencies and trade. And before that, this is not how human beings used to operate. Before that, human beings would operate like a bunch of children that are innocent, that would wake up in the garden of God, and each one would go do something that they felt they were good at doing in order that they bring happiness and fulfill the needs of their family members, of their tribe, of their fellow human beings. So you would have like Abel going out and he's tending to his flock. And why is he tending to his flock of sheep, right? Or his herd of sheep? Why is he doing that? In order that he bring, the wool. So that not only Adam and Eve and himself could wear, but also Cain could wear, right? In order that he brings forward a sheep to be an offering to God, in order that he works the ground or the land, right? As to where you find in the narrations that it is the children of Cain that are inventing and the first ones to bring into this world things such as weapons. It is Cain who was the first one to use an object on the planet to kill another human being. It is the children of Cain that build these cities, like the city of Enoch, and invent all these types of entertainment to distract people. And it became common amongst them to trade and cheat and be focused on gathering money. And we find that it is the children of Cain that were in power in the time of Adam, and they fill up the earth and they oppress the children of Adam, so much so that in the end Noah has no choice but to ask God that the flood comes down. And God is forced to wipe out the earth. And we find that there is a repeat of that which is taking place in this day and age. You have now the children of Cain have controlled almost every part of the earth. They're going against every single law and commandment that God has brought down. God says in the Quran to people, he says, go forward and travel in the earth. Would they do the exact opposite? They set up borders and they invent things called passports, and they convince you that, you're not a human being, but you're actually an American, or you're a Canadian, or you're a Mexican, or you're an Egyptian, or you're a British citizen, and and in order for you to travel outside, actually, to get this little thing over here, you need to pay us a certain amount of money, and then we're going to give you this passport, and it's really just a book that gives you the authority to cross into another country, when God had already given humanity and gave all human beings the right to travel across the entire planet. It's a tragic and very sad thing that they have done, and they have invented and came up with and amassed and have taxed people in order that they build weapons that are so mighty that it can destroy the entire planet, 100,000 times over.
Yeah, they've essentially commodified human beings. They've turned them into something that can be traded, which is despicable when you think about it. With every control measure that they implement, it's literally like driving cattle, isn't it?
It is.
There's no humanity in it. It's literally just wealth gathering and capitalism at its worst, really. And it's reached this point where it's unbearable.
Yeah, and you have this contrast of images here, where you have these tax collectors repenting from their evil deeds in order that they follow Jesus Christ, right? And you find the prophets and messengers condemning the tax collector, and the Prophet Muhammad, even in the narrations of him and his family, stating very clearly that there are certain individuals that God will never forgive on the day of judgment. If they don't repent and stop doing what they're doing and they die, God will never accept their repentance. And from those individuals, he mentioned the police officer, and the judge, and the tax collector.
Wow.
And those three roles are three fundamental roles in upholding the state of the tyrant or the or the oppressor today. The message of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam is that humanity is first, and that all of the so-called countries and organizations that exist on the face of the planet today, even though they proclaim humanitarian causes and they proclaim that humanity comes first, but actually their very setup was based on the oppression of human beings, and that it was all a trick and deception. And everything that these organizations and these countries and these man-made laws were set up to do was to contradict actually the laws and the teachings of the prophets and the messengers. So the prophets and the messengers, they say one thing, and the nations are proclaiming that they're followers of these prophets and messengers, that it's a Jewish nation, or it's a Christian nation, or it's a Muslim nation. But in reality, they are the anti-Islam, anti-Christianity, anti-Judaism. And it starts, its very foundation is the appointment of a leader, right? A ruler, a prime minister, a president, a king, right? A government that was not appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that was not appointed by God. And it's odd that the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims, they can't see that. They can't see that they were taught in the Quran that God said, I am the one who chooses Adam. I'm the one who makes him a vicegerent in the earth. I'm the one who blows in him of my spirit, and he's commanding the angels to prostrate. And initially the angels, they don't know. They're confused. They don't know why they should prostrate. They think that they have a better choice, a better idea. They propose to God, to not create human beings in the earth. They propose an alternative to be successors to him in the land. They say that we're the ones, meaning the angels, we're the ones that obey you. They're not obeying you. They're going to spill blood in the land. And God tells them, verily, I know that which you don't know. And so the core idea in Islam is that you cannot run government based on your own system or your own ideas. You have to submit to the laws of God and to, more importantly, the person whom is appointed, who's chosen by God. And they have that in the beginning of Islam. They have the idea in Islam that God chose all of the prophets and the messengers. You have verses in the Quran that state that we did not send a single messenger except that he be obeyed. You have Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam being God's choice to sit on the throne and to be the political leader and the religious leader of the nation of Islam. And you also have this narrative that's very clear for Sunnis and Shia that the Muslims are going to go so far away from Islam and they're going to have their own rulers and they're going to go through these periods where they're going to have their own caliphs and then they're going to have their own kings and they're going to have their own sultans, and then people are going to go so far away from Islam that it's going to be unrecognizable and lost, and there's going to be no guidance that's left in the masjids, and that the jurisprudence are going to be traitors, etc., etc. And then what happens? And then the Mahdi comes. And they believe, Sunnis and Shia, that the Mahdi is a guy who's appointed by God. And that it's obligatory, at least they agree in that it's obligatory to follow and pledge allegiance to this man who is appointed by God. So it starts off with an appointment by God. It continues consistently to be an appointment by God. And then it ends with the appointment by God. So how do Muslims not see this? Same thing in Christianity. What do they think? What did they think? What do Christians think today? What do Americans think or Europeans think? The European Christian, the American Christian who believes in these two contradicting ideas of democracy and also the Bible. How do the two come together? It's impossible that they come together because they believed that the Romans were electing and putting into power their own choice. And the Quran and the Torah and the Gospels say if you follow most of the people in the earth, they would lead you astray. Even Europe's most brilliant minds, like Socrates, he thought democracy was a horrible idea, and that it would lead to the destruction of the entire civilization. And so they believe that Jesus came, and Jesus was this appointed ruler by God, right? Who came into conflict with the choice of the people, right? And every step of the way, they're choosing Caesar over Jesus. They're choosing the rabbis over Jesus. They're choosing Barabbas over Jesus, all right? They choose the criminal over Jesus. So the human beings are unable to appoint. And oddly enough, the Christians are waiting for the return of Jesus. In their narrative, it's the same thing like in Islam. The Christians end up going through these phases where it becomes really bad, and there's wars and there's punishments on the earth, and the Antichrist is sent, and I don't know what, and all this famine and disease and bad things are taking place. And it necessitates that somebody come and save the day. And it's not democracy, guys, according to the book of Revelation, that comes and saves the day and cleans up the mess. It's not. It's not the Democrats. It's not the Republicans. It's not the communists. It's not the socialists. It's not Trump. It's not Putin. It's not Biden. It's not Clinton. You know who it is? No. It's Jesus Christ. And who's Jesus? Jesus in his second coming is the appointment by God, the appointed one, the successor of God in the land. But the very system is set up to oppose him. Okay, because America and the European nations and the UK, they can only be ruled according to their constitutions by the people that were elected by the people. Yeah. So unless Jesus is elected by these nations, he can never rule over them. Yeah. He would be a terrorist, he would be an enemy of the state if he attempted to rule over them. Do you understand? Yeah. And that's crazy. That's insane. And that it's insane that he doesn't even qualify to rule over them. There's nothing in the Constitution that says in the second coming of Christ, we will all submit or hand over the power, or that he can ascend to the throne, or this is a state that is built for him. But they lie. The constitutions and the founding fathers, they lie. What do they say? They say, oh, it's built upon Christian ideals, but it's really not. It's built upon the anti-Christ ideals. Yeah. Where the Christ himself has no chance because he's not an American citizen. He's not an Italian citizen. He's not a UK citizen. So how can he ascend to power in any of these countries? Was he going to descend from the heavens and then live as a refugee for a while and then apply for citizenship after fulfilling his residency requirements, and then he's going to work really hard at a local Tesco or a local Barnes and Noble or whatever it is that he's going to work at until he saves enough money and convinces enough people to fund his campaign, and then he's going to go out there and kind of run against somebody else in a message. How is that possible? That's not possible. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's like the whole system is designed, like you said, to keep him out. And that's what Imam Mahdi is trying to wake people up to and free us from. Yeah. And he's saying that it's haram to work in any position of power, or in any way, shape, or form to work in a system that supports, any of these tyrants that are ruling over mankind today. If you are playing a part in that system, you need to remove yourself out of it and declare yourself innocent from it, because you are helping the oppression of humanity and helping a system stand strong that opposes the laws of God and tells people to do the exact opposite. God says in the Quran, he says, we've made you into nations and tribes in order that you may know one another, right? Yeah. Know one another. According to the narrations of Muhammad and the family, Muhammad means to multiply with one another. Wow. Right? So imagine that God is commanding us to be fruitful and multiply, for the different nations that they come together and they become one family. Yeah. And you got these people over here putting up borders, and they're saying that we need to worry about our own kind and our own selves and to not integrate with other nations, and preventing people from traveling on God's green earth. Isn't that crazy? That's disgusting. Yeah. Like, you have the prophets and the messengers stating that people should only take what they need from God's green earth. Mm-hmm. Anything more than what you need doesn't belong to you. It belongs to other people. And you have the laws preventing, the tax laws, as we previously discussed, and everything else preventing, making it impossible that companies and individuals even donate to the poor without facing consequences, of unnecessary taxation and all this stuff. So the laws itself are always set up to break the laws of God. God's telling us in these books, he's the one who appoints the leader, right? Mm-hmm. And he gets offended, like in the story of Samuel and the appointment of Saul, when the Israelites want that God appoint for them a king, just like the rest of the nations. He doesn't like that. He doesn't want a government like the rest of the nations. And you have over here, people are working night and day in order to, and they're dying for protecting a system that's going against that, that's prohibiting the appointed one by God from ruling, and, going with the, basically propagating the idea that the people should choose for themselves, who it is that they want to rule over them. And the choice of the people always ends up being extremely bad. Just like God warned the Israelites, he said, if you guys choose for, if you guys do this, the king's going to come. He's going to tax you guys. He's going to use your daughters. He's going to use your sons. He's going to make them go out into wars. He's going to cause chaos, cause havoc. And we are doing the exact same thing that God warned us not to do. Instead of just coming together, instead of having the people that are passionate, and good at hunting, for example, that they go and they move forward in the land and they hunt animals and they bring forward the meat and they give the meat to the hungry, and that you have other people that are passionate about making clothing, and they can sit there and they can make clothing all day, and they give the clothing for free to the hunters, and the hunters gives them meat for free, and both of them clothe and feed the sick and the poor. All right. Yeah. You have a system that's built upon money and chasing money and gathering money, and idol worship and the rejection of the Caliph of God. We'll leave it there, and we will, inshallah, come back together on a future episode. But that is, the first part of the message of the Mahdi, of Imam al-Mahdi, and what it is that we're propagating, that humanity comes first, and that the systems that are in place and the people that were put into power are traitors that are not working for the benefit of mankind, and each and every one of them is preaching the same message that Cain did. Each and every one of them are, focusing on amassing weapons and doing the opposite of what God intended for us to be like. All the while they are proclaiming to be acting and speaking in the name of these religions, when they are the enemies of these religions, and that God had a different plan for us, and that plan is a world where mankind can come together for the betterment of each other, and to help each other. Regardless of their race, regardless of their religion, regardless of their nationality, and that all borders should be broken down, all differences should be put aside, all people should be free to practice or believe whatever it is that they believe in, and that all of these people, anybody who's born on the planet, should have the fundamental right to live until their death on the planet, having received anything that they need to survive and to live a decent life as a son of Adam. Christians, Jews, Muslims, all of them believe that God gave the planet itself to Adam. He made Adam in charge of it, the custodian of it, that God made all of these animals and plants for him and at his service. And so therefore the whole planet and everything that's on it was a gift that God gave to Adam, right? Yeah. And it was put into place for the sake of Adam. Yeah. And we are the successors of Adam. Jews, Christians, and Muslims believe that we are the children of Adam. And so every human being that's born on the planet, right, deserves his fair share or her fair share of the inheritance of their father, and to be sustained by the goodness that the earth has to offer. And anybody who seeks to kill another human being, or to propagate wars, is nothing more than a son of the devil and a son of Cain who is seeking to do the exact same thing that their forefather did. And Jesus pointed this out very beautifully in the Gospels, where he's asking the Pharisees, why do you guys want to kill me? You don't listen to me and you want to kill me because you want to do the same like your father before you, Satan, Cain. And so we have the enemies of God in power. And if humanity just came together, they would be able to collapse the system by abstaining from participation in it, and then if we just turn to God's choice, his appointment, if we just accepted at least to come together on the basis of, abiding by the principle of humanity first and helping one another, the world would be a better place.
Yeah, if the world was focused on loving humanity rather than loving wealth, a lot of problems would be solved like that. Instantly. Yeah.
Well, God bless you, Sermad, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this.
Inshallah, many more episodes to come.
Inshallah.